All right. Hey YouTube, I'm Lucky, and many people have asked me to weigh in my opinions on the recent Destiny drama, which is, should the Divinity be nerfed? So we're going to go ahead and tackle into this subject. We've had probably every content creator under the sun either respond to this tweet or make their own videos. So let's go ahead and dive into this and go through all of the bullet points and everything that is interesting about this argument, okay? So pulling up the original tweet right here, we have Salt Grepo tweeting out Divinity nerf discussion. Hey, this is going to be a thread. I've been thinking about a way to nerf Divinity for quite a bit. The gun is basically mandatory for most boss encounters, and it makes aiming a non-factor, which is very unhealthy for the game for multiple reasons, such as. So basically, Salt Grepo is the back-to-back world's first winner of the raid races. He's an absolute beast in PvE. Everyone knows that by now. He proposes that we nerf Divinity for the reasons of it gets basically mandatory for boss encounters, and it basically makes aiming not an issue because of the giant div cage. You know, it's very hard to miss that div cage, but if you're shooting a boss in their crit normally, it's usually pretty hard, and it actually takes a bit of skill, which is kind of important in an FPS game. But we'll go ahead and read the rest of these responses here. We've got removing most of the skill gap during DPS and making precision weapons way too easy to use. Although I will say that that was the intent of Divinity when Bungie made it, so it's not like Divinity is bugged or doing something that Bungie isn't intending for it to do, but of course the health of the game is important when we do talk about some of these issues. The reason why I mentioned this is because let's use an example like the recent grenade launcher bug where we could kill all the raid bosses very easily with grenade launchers. There, instead of doing 10% more damage, they're doing like 250% more, right? Clearly that's unhealthy for the game as a whole because instead of using any other power weapon, you're just going to spam all bosses with grenade launchers. So, you know, clearly things have to be balanced into some light. So I think there are some really good points that Salt Greppo is making in this, so we're going to continue to read it here. Forcing high risk, high reward weapons such as Whisper of the Worm out of the meta, since they simply can't be buffed, otherwise they would be S tier due to Div removing the risk aspect. For the longest time, I didn't really ever come up with a viable solution. I don't think removing the debuff would do much. Teams would still apply a debuff by other means and use div on top of that for ease of crits. Reducing reserves or magazine size would probably be pretty insignificant. We have multiple ways to produce special ammo on demand, and hunters can easily negate low mag downsides by just dodging to reload or throwing a shuriken. There really aren't many viable solutions without completely reworking the weapon, in my opinion. The guaranteed crits are just too good on certain bosses, but not long ago I finally came up with an idea that could work while also preserving the gun's identity. What if Divinity kept giving the crit bubble, but provided a 0% debuff that overrides any other debuff? So that, for example, using Divinity plus Tether still resulted in no debuff as long as div is applied, which is a pretty drastic and pretty big change to Divinity. And I will say this, that there should probably be some sort of trade-off for making the crit huge. I mean, right now the trade-off is instead of having all 6 people shoot linear fusions at a boss or Galhorns or whatever it may be, one person is shooting Divinity, and it's because of that debuff that it makes it very much worth it DPS-wise for one person to use Divinity for the debuff and then 5 people to use the strongest power weapon currently in the game. That's what we see on almost every raid boss that really matters when we're trying to melt them. So removing the debuff in its entirety is a bit of an extreme example, and I think that's where some people get a little bit fired up about that and get a little bit upset. If you have a difference of opinion, feel free to comment down below. That would make it so if you decide to use div, you both sacrifice someone's damage and lose the ability to debuff the target, making it a safe option, but worse compared to what a skill team could pull off by hitting their shots. This is something that should be easy to implement from a technical standpoint, since we already had in the past lower percentage debuffs that used to override higher ones, and it would make using div a choice with a strong trade-off. This change wouldn't really affect less skilled teams that want an easy crit running when running their weekly raids, since damage checks in normal mode are easy enough, and as long as you're hitting your shots, a debuff isn't needed. On the other end, it would make day 1/contest raids way more interesting, since ambitious teams will be able to risk not using Divinity and try to get a higher DPS output by hitting their shots. Let me know what you think down below, or if you have any other ideas. Since so many people keep saying this, no, difficulty isn't the point. I don't think it's needed, but if that's what it takes, let's reduce bosses' HPs to make up for the nerf so that casuals won't be affected. The whole point is that div shouldn't be both the best and easiest option. So there you have it. Div should not be the best and easiest option, which I think is a fair point to make. There's a little bit of a trade-off, obviously, like I mentioned, where one person is using Div and they're not able to shoot their Galhorn or linear fusion rifle. I think that the idea of it doing a 0% debuff is probably not especially helpful. I know a lot of people will say, you know, Saltagrepo has an elitist view because of he's so good at the game. Obviously, he has multiple worlds first. He's solo and duo, pretty much every encounter. You know, he speed runs GMs in 5 minutes and stuff of that nature, right? Which, although he is very skilled at the game, I think he is presenting a pretty fair opinion. I know some people will get really fired up and really upset about the idea of nerfing Divinity, especially because it's a weapon that really helps with issues of accessibility in Destiny 2. Not everyone has the best aim or the ability to hit those boss crits, and they still want to play Destiny, they still want to beat the raid and stuff. And Divinity, being shot at a boss, is always a really good role for someone who's a low-skilled player, and also those who shoot the boss afterwards will have a chance of actually hitting that crit, because I know some of you out there have some pretty bad aim. Comment down below if you're the guy on the team that misses those shots, but I do think that accessibility is an important issue. I do think that there is room for an adjustment where stronger debuffs can exist that require more skill. For example, like Divinity does, like, I believe 30% debuff right now. There could be a 40% debuff exotic or weapon or mod in the artifact right now, right? Currently we have Sundering, which does like 20%, and they don't stack together, so that's why you don't see that. Perhaps Divinity should do 20% and Sundering should do 30%, or maybe Sundering should just do 40% outright. I don't know. I don't know what the exact solution to all of this is. This has definitely created a huge bit of controversy. Bungie devs have even chimed in saying that they think it's a fair criticism and that it's a lot of fair points are being made. I know a lot of people are trying to throw flack and throw hate at Saltagrepo for these opinions. I don't think that's really the appropriate response. I think it's better to, you know, he's creating an actual intricate response. It's better to, you know, try to take apart his ideas and see what they were really trying to get at, you know? And I think that the bottom line, a lot of what he's saying is increasing the skill ceiling of PvE. And I don't know that that's really Bungie's interest. I think that you see this a lot of times in PvP. There will be skillful weapons, and then there will be weapons like Lawrence Driver, which are just absolutely insane. There will be weapons like Lord of Wolves pre-nerf. Do you remember that thing? Holy crap. If you don't remember how strong that was, just go watch 1v3 I Release the Wolves, those videos. If they teabag I Release the Wolves, you'll see how insane that was, right? There's always these outliers, you know, that sort of bring the skill ceiling down, allow for new players to play the game, allow for a whole different, you know, Bungie in PvP doesn't seem to create a really high skill ceiling, and the same thing does carry over to PvE in a lot of ways. And although there is a contest, you know, a raid contest, a world's first raid race, it is but 2 days out of the year, really, at this point. And I think that Divinity, as it is, does present some problems because it is the easiest thing, it's the easiest to use, and it is the strongest debuff. But I don't know that the alternative is removing the debuff from it. Maybe reduce it, or maybe make an alternative debuffing weapon or mod that require a little more skill. Maybe make some people happy. But I think that the people they'd be making happy are the top 1 to 5% people, and I think the bottom 95% of people would be either unhappy or just not enjoy it as much. But let me know your thoughts down below. I'm very curious to see how people have been responding to this, and make sure to smash the like button, subscribe if you enjoyed. I'll see you in the next one. Later.